Luxor has been a beautiful experience. But it's time to check out once again. My third hotel in a week. For the first time on this trip, a car will not be necessary. We'll be catching the train to Aswan, in what I've been told is a VIP train. Tommy's relaxed, probably because he's taken a break from driving today. I know I look different to most people, but why on earth did I bring that bright red suitcase? There are different classes of trains in Egypt. For only a few dollars, one can see the beauty this country has to offer. Finally, time to board. And after a few minutes, we're on our way. At least I've got a car to myself. Most of it anyway. The train will travel 240 kilometers south to the city of Aswan, or what some call the beginning of Nubia. I'm very excited to be heading to a part of Egypt seldom visited, but which is where Kemet's true origins are found. Up the Nile, further into Africa. Kemet and Nubia remained united throughout the dynastic periods. The Kemetyu were a separate nation who came together under Nama, creating the first dynasty of the region. It's for this reason Kemet's rulers wore a double crown, representing the two lands, north and south. Nubia did get its chance to rule Kemet in the 25th dynasty, nearly 3,000 years ago. Historians incorrectly label the Nubian dynasties as the first black rulers of Kemet. Except for the Hyksos invasion during the 15th dynasty, Kemet remained an African civilization, ruled by the northern blacks. The Nubian dynasties were merely the first time Kemet was ruled by the south. Despite only ruling about a century, the Kushite contributions to Kemet's history were immense. The great religious text known as the Memphis Theology, the birth of the third writing form known as the Demotic script, and under Heru Taharqa saw Kemet's last great walk in the sun. Before long, we'd reached Edfu, the first stop on our 3-hour journey. People seem so oblivious to the greatness they're around every day. Life is hard in Africa, though much simpler in rural parts, slower than the big cities. But that's not a bad thing. And we're off again. At Edfu, the train begins to run alongside the Nile. The Nile gets wider as we approach the south, and whenever we slow down, I notice how darker people become the further south one goes. Egyptians in the north are a mixture of the old Kemetyu and their many invaders from the east and the north. As the years went on, the bulk of the dark-skinned descendants of Kemet moved further south into what is now Sudan, Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda. Others fled beyond that, and even into West Africa, taking with them many of the practices and technology which they mastered in Kemet. It is why the Watutsi, the Yoruba, the Hausa, the Akan, the Wolof, and other groups on the continent share similar languages and practices as the Kemetyu. In some ways, they borrowed from Kemet. In others, they brought it to Kemet. Before long, we arrive in Aswan. Where has Tommy gone? We're only here for a few days, so we need to get a move on. Leaving the station, I feel as though I've been transported back to the 1990s. Unlike Luxor, where the Peugeot 504 made a few cameos, in Aswan, it's looks more like a series regular. Made between 1968 and 2006, the Peugeot 504 was Africa's car, common right across the continent. Along with the 505, Peugeot's cars were for the wealthy and the working class alike. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, they were everywhere. So seeing this many here, I have a tremendous feeling of nostalgia. It turns out our hotel was only a short walk away from the station. So our taxi drops us off in the busy market. Aswan was once known as Swenet. The name is said to be derived from the Kemetyu symbol for trade or market. And Aswan continues to live up to its name today. After a long journey, it's always nice to have a decent hotel to check into. As much as I'd like to rest, there's a lot to see here in Aswan. Tommy wasn't lying. The Nile is beautiful in Aswan. Even the air feels different to that of Cairo, even Luxor. Aswan was once Kemet's frontier town with the Kushite empires of modern-day Sudan. One can only imagine what this scene would have been like thousands of years ago, as merchants loaded their goods to trade in faraway lands. So Tommy, what's the plan?
The plan now to going to Philae Island.
Yeah.
Taking around the Philae Island, and then the driver takes us to the Nubian village.
Okay.
And let us here.
Our first port in Aswan is the island of Agilikia, home to the Philae Temple complex. This is the water that leads into Lake Nasser. In ancient times, this area was part of the first cataract of the Nile. The cataracts of the Nile refer to the shallow lengths of white water or rapids of the Nile. The water's surface is broken by many small boulders and stones jutting out of the riverbed. But here, its flow is smooth but shallow. The approach to Philae's Temple is amazing, but this wasn't its original location. After the Aswan Dam was completed in 1902, the Temple of Oset at Philae and other nearby archaeological sites were repeatedly hit by floods. In the 1960s, the Egyptian government teamed up with UNESCO for the Philae Rescue Project. Plans were made to dismantle the entire complex and rebuild it on higher ground on a nearby island before the construction of the Aswan High Dam and the giant artificial reservoir of Lake Nasser could do even more damage to it. The project was a success, and in 1980, Philae Temple had been built on Agilikia Island. Even before its relocation, Philae was famed for its beautiful approach from the water. And fortunately, not much has changed. We dock at the jetty on the south shore of the island, and it's a brief uphill walk to the complex. This is the Temple of Oset, or Isis, as she's known today. The main site originally built by Taharqa, the Nubian ruler of Kemet from the 25th dynasty. He's one of the few figures mentioned in the Bible who we can find evidence of their existence. Taharqa's father had conquered Kemet for the Kushite empires years earlier. As the years went on, several kings built additional monuments here between the 26th and 30th dynasties. The Greeks made some additions, the Romans too, as did the Christians much later. The complex was a way the Kemetyu would show appreciation to their deity. But to understand what she meant to them, we must understand the myth of the Osirian Drama. From the union of Geb, the earth god, and Nut, the sky goddess, came 4 children: Osiris or Asa, or Set or Isis, Sutek or Set, and Nebet-Het or Nephthys. As the oldest, Osiris became king of Kemet and married his sister Isis. He was a good king who commanded the respect of all who lived on the earth and the gods who dwelled in the netherworld. But Set was jealous of his brother. One day, he transformed himself into a vicious monster and attacked Osiris, killing him and cutting his body into several pieces, which he distributed throughout Kemet. Set became king and married his other sister, Nephthys. Nephthys felt sorry for Isis and decided to help find the pieces of her dead husband and bring him back to life long enough so that they could have a child. They roamed across Kemet, collecting pieces of Osiris's body and reassembled what they could. Isis then breathed the breath of life onto his body and resurrected him. Despite him having no penis, the two made love, and a child was soon born. His name was Heru, the hawk god, born on the winter solstice, the 25th of December. As an adult, he decided to make a case before the gods that he, not his uncle Set, was the rightful king of Kemet. Set challenged Horus to a contest, and the winner would become king. But Set didn't play fair and cheated his way to victory. Isis helped her son set a trap for Set, and eventually Horus fought him off. The other gods quickly stepped in. Then the sun and the stars, Osiris's allies, descended into the underworld, leaving the world in darkness. The gods eventually agreed that Horus should claim his birthright as king of Kemet. This Osirian drama went on to influence many of the world's religions. Isis became a role model for Kemetyu women for being a wife, mother, mourner, and magical healer. She was worshipped as the goddess of good fortune, the sea, and travel. Even the Romans revered her, and each spring they celebrated her at a festival later known across the Roman world as Navigium Isidis. And as Christianity developed in Turkey and then Europe, she and her son would be worshipped in a different way, as the Black Madonna and child, the Black Madonna being Isis, and the child being her own Horus, born on the 25th of December from the non-sexual union between a virgin and a god. The magic of Aswan is in fact that the people who occupy it are descendants of those who built it. But it's time to leave the island now and head towards a village where I can find more Nubians. We're back on solid land now, at a somewhat traditional Nubian village, not too far from where our boat docked. It's basically just a tourist market with Nubian products, but it's nice to be around my people. Race in Egypt is a taboo subject. Many of the nations in the Persian Gulf and Northern Africa are dominated by lighter-skinned people whose origins are in the so-called Middle East. Having already been mixed with the Greeks in the Ptolemaic dynasties, when the Umayyad Caliphate invaded in the 7th century, they further integrated with locals, and eventually the darker populations in the north began to fade out. Nubia held out for centuries, hence why it's still very African. When the Ottomans and British partitioned the area into Sudan and Egypt, whole groups of Africans were left isolated and felt somewhat marginalized in Upper Egypt. Arabic culture, religion, and language dominated, and even though many monuments were flooded under Lake Nasser, the Nubians still fight to keep their heritage.
I have this many color arms like this. I'm made arms like this. The material is cotton.
It's cotton.
I have.
It's not strong.
Arms like
It's not tear. Oh God.
We settle for dinner at a restaurant overlooking the river. And even as the delicious food is served, the Nile continues to fill my appetite. Growing up, my father owned several Charlton Heston films. One which resonated in my mind was released in 1966 and starred he and Sir Laurence Olivier, based on the Mahdist wars of the 1880s and 1890s. The film was about the siege of the Sudanese city of Khartoum by a man named Muhammad Ahmad Abdallah. One of the locations used in the film was a famous rock-cut temple built to honor the gods and the ever-so-popular Ramses II. It's located nearly 300 kilometers south of Aswan, at a place called Abu Simbel. Our last stop in Upper Egypt. It's taken us 3 hours, but we finally arrive in the town of Abu Simbel, 35 kilometers from the border with Sudan, and the most southerly city in modern-day Egypt.
My name is Walid.
Wally, nice to meet you. Onuora.
What's your name?
Onuora.
Onuora. From where?
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
But my mother is from Rwanda.
But you live where?
I live in Nigeria.
Nigeria?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
My guide is a native of Abu Simbel. I don't doubt for a second he knows his stuff. But let's see what he says when I push him about the harder questions regarding Kemet.
From that spot, you can see the beauty of the lake. How the lake is so big.
Yeah. That's it.
So, if you look down there, that is the original location of the temple.
Really?
Yes. So you can imagine if they kept it, it will be completely drawn by the water. You need to know this temple is so deep, it's like 61 meter deep inside the rock. So we can say the back or the rear of the monument just down there. But it's the front, it was cover all this area. So to relocate the temple, they dismantled the whole entire mountains around the temple and dismantled the temple itself to huge pieces and reassemble it one by one over its original mount. All that was achieved in 4 years and a half, 1964 till 1968, by the organization of UNESCO.
So all of this, as far as maybe a few meters, was like a town in the old days.
Yes,
looking
like
at
villages,
the temple, like the villages.
Yes, like villages. Yes.
Wow. So it was just here.
Yes, just down there. So there is a temple like 60 meter up, 200 meter to the back, to be far from the water.
So when the Nile is high,
It's the time of building the high dam, especially, we have 2 dams on the Nile. Aswan Dam, the lower dam, and the biggest one, which called High Dam, 1960 to 1971. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
And now, prepare yourself for a big surprise.
No problem. I'm not going to look until I get there.
Imagine all that was carved in one single rock from 3,200 years ago.
Incredible.
And imagine all that was relocated by the organization of UNESCO.
Oh, incredible. And they're Nubians, these people. Ramses he wasn't Nubian, but he's African.
He's Egyptian, but he controlled Nubian land.
But what I mean is, when I look at him, he looks African to me.
It's not Egyptians.
What does Egyptian look like? Especially old days.
Yeah, but you need to know there is different races. It was a great civilization.
Yeah. But when I look at him,
you will find Egyptian features, not a Nubian features.
Well, what's the difference between Nubian and Egyptian features?
Yes, you need to know that Egyptians little different from Nubians. Nubian people normally, their skin is dark skin. Yes, sometimes you can find the Egyptian is more shorter than Nubian. Normally the Nubian is taller.
Okay.
And sharp, detailed in their faces. There is skull. So it's different features.
Okay.
To know what is the difference between the two features, it's not easy.
Right.
But for the people, it's easy to recognize between the Egyptian and Nubians.
Okay.
Seeing the temple of Ramses II at Abu Simbel has been the object of my dreams since the age of 7. I must say it was a little ruined by this brother going out of his way to explain away the Kemetyu's African origins. Ray Charles could see that these 4 images of Ramses are as African as my guide and I. I guess he half said it.
So why 4? Why did he have to do
actually
4?
number 4 is very important number in the Egyptian mythology because it's referred to the 4 directions and also the 4 elements: water, fire, earth, and soil. Yes. So the height or the tall of each statue, like 20 meter high, distance between his lips 1.5 meter.
Okay.
And the 4 statues are identical. Ramses the Great had a big family. How many queens? Like 24. How many kids? more or less 100 of kids.
Right. Okay.
So beside and inside his legs, you can see another small statues. That small statues depicting some favorite members of his family.
Okay.
But if you focus on the very top, very top, you can see there is a row of baboons, monkeys. You can see the
See that
baboons.
across? Yeah. Right on top.
Yes.
Yeah. See
All
that?
of them sitting and raise their hand like that. Why that position? That's to greeting and welcoming Ra, sun god, which rising daily from the east. So the baboon welcoming Ra. That Pharaoh ruled Egypt for a long time, 67 years, and his long time allowed it for him to erect a lot of monuments all over Egypt.
Very vain. Love it. Okay, so I'm gonna go inside now, and then we'll see you in a few minutes.
We'll be waiting you by the shade.
Thank you. Shukran. Thank you.
The temple of Ramses II was dedicated to the gods Amun, Ra-Horakhti, and Ptah. But Ramses II really built this to intimidate his enemies and seat himself among the gods of the land. It's generally seen as the grandest, most beautiful of Kemet's temples, perhaps even as famous as the Giza pyramids. It took about 20 years to build this temple, some 24 years into the reign of Ramses II. The inner part of the temple has the same triangular layout which most ancient Egyptian temples follow, with rooms decreasing in size from the entrance to the sanctuary. It's believed that the axis of the temple was positioned by the Kemetyu architects in such a way that each year, on the 22nd of October and the 22nd of February, the rays of the sun would penetrate the sanctuary and illuminate the sculptures on the back wall. Only the statue of Ptah remained in the dark, not because of Ramses' ego, but that Ptah was the god connected with the realm of the dead. The two dates are said to mark the king's birthday and coronation day respectively. These dates have shifted away from the original ones, especially since the temple's relocation from its original setting, which also altered the temple's alignment. Another sad byproduct of Egypt's need for modernity at the expense of ancient monuments in Nubia. The nearby temple of Hathor and Nefertari was built about 100 meters northeast of the temple of Ramses II. Queen Nefertari was known as a beautiful woman, the most favorite of Ramses' wives. A southern, dark-skinned woman, this was only the second temple in Old Kemet dedicated to a queen. The first was under Akhenaten and was built for his beautiful queen, Nefertiti. In addition to being a pacifist, Akhenaten was also a romantic. He and Nefertiti wrote love poems about each other in their native language, which can still be found today. These rulers built monuments which have lasted several millennia.
Lover. Romeo of ancient time. Imagine Ramses carved with all that, just like a small gift, small present for his favorite queen, Nefertari. Ramses cut the symbol for Nefertari, but he didn't forget himself. Look. Yeah. Ramses, Nefertari, Ramses, Nefertari, Ramses. Yes, my queen, I love you so much, but myself,
I'm more important.
A little more. Yeah. If you look to the crowns, you'll find the king wearing different crown.
Yeah.
Red crown, lower kingdom. White crown, upper kingdom. Double crown, upper and lower. A last crown over there, that is the crown of God Osiris. Who's Osiris? That's is the afterlife God.
Supreme God, yeah.
Underworld God. So it's a very strong message for his queen. Nefertari, among her husband, wearing the same crown, which formed from sun disk, 2 horns of the cow, and 2 long feathers. That is the crown of the cow goddess Hathor, the goddess of sex, love, purity, music, and motherhood. There is on kids besides there is legs. 6 children reflected 2 times. You can see the 6 statue are standing and they looks like step out from the mountain. As you get inside this temple, you will see that hall, the colonnaded hall.
Hathor, known by Africans as Het Heru, is an ancient goddess. She's seen as the queen of heaven, the golden one, the protector of the king, and goddess of the marriage bed. So it's natural that she takes the form of a cow, a provider of milk and a protector of her calves. When the Greeks arrived, they fell in love with this land and converted deities like her to conform to the Greek world. Hathor became Aphrodite in Greece. She went from a wholesome mother to a promiscuous woman, tantamount to a whore. The Romans took her to another level, and under the name Venus, her nature would later be associated with the term venereal disease. It's rare to find statues of Kemetyu kings and their consort of equal size. It's beautiful to see these images. On one side, Ramses and Nefertari presenting papyrus plants to goddess Hathor. On another, they make offerings to the god Horus and the divinities of the cataracts. Upper Egypt has not been a disappointment. The beauty of the past and energy of the present makes the marriage of this place seem like a fantasy. I'm glad it's still here, despite centuries of war, famine, the Aswan Dams, and Egyptologists.